What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Tuesday, November 4th, 2025, and I have some breaking news to share with you guys. Right now it is 15:25 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from the Caribbean and from Eastern Europe and from here in the United States. So earlier this afternoon, all flights at Reagan Airport in DC were halted due to a bomb threat. And what's interesting is, if you remember, about a week ago, there was this active air defense incident just northeast of Reagan Airport, and I was playing the clips for you guys of the air traffic controllers saying that there were F-16s flying in the air just northeast of Reagan Airport. So I don't know if that incident from a week ago is related to what's happening today, but I find it to be a little bit too close to be a coincidence. It just seems like it might be related, but that's just my opinion. Also, we're hearing that there's been some bomb threats in various voting places around the country today, so be careful when you're going to vote today. We have an update from Venezuela. Venezuela has deployed advanced Russian Buk M2E surface-to-air missile systems, according to video evidence analyzed by Army Recognition's defense analysts. And what you're looking at is a clip from this video. So this is the Russian Buk air defense system. This is actually the same air defense system that the militants in eastern Ukraine used to shoot down a civilian plane. I think that was in 2016. It was an accidental shoot down. But nevertheless, the Venezuelans are preparing for war with the United States. The systems observed in a combat-ready configuration near Caracas, which is the capital, mark a significant boost to Venezuela's integrated air defense network. This deployment increases the threat to U.S. air operations by enabling Venezuelan forces to target advanced aircraft like the F-35 Lightning II, the F-15E Strike Eagle, and the F-18 Super Hornet, as well as long-range precision weapons like the Tomahawk land attack missile. So very, very interesting, very concerning. And we saw some video footage over the weekend of Venezuelan F-16s doing some live fire practice. They were dropping bombs. Also, Venezuela stepped up deterrence patrols in the Caribbean with Russian Sukhoi 30 fighter jets, and they're deployed with Russian KH-31A Mach 3 anti-ship missiles. Okay, so these are missiles that can be used to target American warships. And the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier, which is on its way right now to the Caribbean. Its last known location yesterday was about 200 miles east of the Strait of Gibraltar, and it's going to travel another 4,000 miles or so before it reaches the Caribbean, and they have a top speed of 35 miles an hour. So assuming that they're traveling at that top speed and they're not making any stops, we're looking at probably about 5 days until they reach the Caribbean. So by this weekend, the Gerald Ford should be pretty close to the Caribbean. And in one of my live streams over the weekend, we actually counted how many missile launch cells the U.S. has in the Caribbean between all of their guided missile destroyers and guided missile cruisers and submarines. And we counted 1,088 missile launch cells between all of the guided missile warships and submarines that the U.S. has moved or will be moving to the Caribbean. Okay, so in one volley without reloading, the U.S. can launch over 1,000 missiles at Venezuela. And this update was sponsored by EMP Shield. Guys, EMP Shield has created a special discount just for you, the listeners of the NYPrepper channel. If you go to empshield.com and use the promo code NYPrepper, you can get 15% off your entire order. And why do you need an EMP Shield? Well, this is a special device to protect your vehicle, your RV, your solar generators, your radios from an electromagnetic pulse, which could be caused by a solar flare or potentially a rogue country like North Korea detonating an electromagnetic pulse weapon over the United States that's mounted onto a satellite. So protect your vehicles, protect your RV, protect your radios, protect your generators with an EMP Shield. Use my promo code NYPrepper to get 15% off. Installation is super simple. This is a veteran-owned business, 100% American-made, and the EMP Shields have been tested by the military, okay? And free shipping is included to the entire continental United States. And the link and the promo code are in the description below this video. Now, that's not including the defensive missiles. Likely, probably half of those cells would be filled with the SM-3 ballistic missile interceptors and various types of anti-ship missile or air defense missiles that can target the anti-ship missiles that would be coming at them and the carrier. So probably half of that 1,100 will be dedicated to defensive missiles and the other half to offensive. And that's just one volley without reloading. Okay, they can obviously go back and reload. So that's a massive amount of firepower that you simply don't need if you're just going to be targeting some cartels in the jungle. Okay. And Russia is going to be giving Venezuela Oreshnik intercontinental or intermediate range ballistic missiles. According to Alexei Zhuravov, the first deputy chairman of Russia's Parliamentary Defense Committee, he said this yesterday, okay? So that is very, very concerning, guys. That's like the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay, the Oreshniks are basically a two-stage ICBM. It's basically one of Russia's Topol missiles or RS-24 Yars. And rather than having three stages like most ICBMs do, they just removed one stage. And that basically removes like a third of its maximum range. So with those Oreshniks, though, they can target all of the continental U.S. from Venezuela. Okay, so a massive escalation by Russia. And Reuters captured new images showing the deployment of a mobile aircraft arresting system and a tactical air navigation beacon, or TACAN, at the former Roosevelt Roads Naval Station in Puerto Rico. These developments could suggest preparations for sustained high-tempo flight operations at the site. Okay, so high-tempo flight operations. Wow. Okay, so again, that's not something you would do for striking a few cartels in the jungles of Venezuela. You don't need tactical air navigation beacons and mobile aircraft arresting systems and 1,100 missiles at your disposal, okay, and an aircraft carrier, which can carry over 75 warplanes, all right? And the Washington Post is reporting that the U.S. deployment in the Caribbean has reached 16,000 troops. That is just absolutely massive. We also have some very concerning footage coming out of Saudi Arabia. Apparently, Saudi Arabia tested some of their emergency warning sirens for air raids and various types of emergencies. I'll play a clip of this video here. Again, this is in Saudi Arabia. They did this yesterday. They tested all their warning sirens for some reason. You can actually see the Saudi Arabian police sitting there parked while they're doing this. We also have this interesting NOTAM, or Notice to Airmen, basically a no-fly zone in the area of Beale Air Force Base that started 2 days ago, November the 2nd, and is going to last all the way through March 8th. So 5 months. And the reason for the NOTAM is temporary flight restrictions for security reasons. So this is very vague and very interesting. And they say here, all aircraft entering or exiting the TFR, that's the NOTAM, must be on a discrete code assigned by an air traffic control facility. TFR is temporary flight restriction. Okay, so they have to have some kind of discrete code, like a password essentially. Aircraft must be squawking the discrete code at all times while in the temporary flight restriction. All aircraft entering or exiting the temporary flight restriction must remain in two-way radio communications with the air traffic controller. Okay, so not sure what's going on here, but for 5 months, they have a temporary flight restriction for special security reasons at Beale Air Force Base. Very, very strange. I don't know if they're going to be testing some kind of exotic aircraft like the SR-72 Blackbird, or maybe some replacement for the U-2 spy plane, but Beale is where the U-2 spy planes are based out of. And also, I believe Beale has the ground-based mid-course defense system, which is part of our missile defense system that we can use to shoot down ICBMs, okay, over the Pacific. So I don't know what's going on over there. And South Korean intelligence reported today that North Korea moved an additional 10,000 troops to the border of Ukraine to help Russia fight Ukraine. And the German news outlet Welt says NATO developed a 4,000-page plan to counter a Russian attack. The plan provides for a number of comprehensive measures to protect NATO's eastern flank, in particular about strengthening combat units, redeploying heavy equipment, using drones and autonomous systems. And Welt also reported that NATO military officials believe now that war with Russia is inevitable, and they are seriously concerned about it, okay? And Russia, over the weekend, launched a new doomsday submarine designed to carry 6 Russian last resort doomsday weapons known as the Status 6 or Poseidon, which is a nuclear-powered and nuclear-armed torpedo that is said to be armed with a warhead bigger than the Tsar bomb. If you don't know what the Tsar bomb is, look it up. It's the largest nuclear bomb ever tested by mankind. And the Soviets tested it during the Cold War. It was a 50 megaton nuclear bomb. They dropped it over the Novaya Zemlya, which is an island in the Barents Sea. And the explosion was so powerful that windows broke all the way in Norway, well over 500 miles away, or even 1,000 miles away. The blast wave caused windows to shatter hundreds of miles away, and they're saying that the Russians now have these underwater autonomous vehicles that are powered by nuclear reactors and have nuclear warheads attached bigger than the Tsar bomb, okay? And so they just launched the submarine that can carry 6 of them, so think about that, all right? And then just a few days before they announced that, Russia tested their nuclear-powered cruise missile, the Burevestnik, which is also very concerning because that means that this cruise missile can penetrate any air defense, okay, because it has a nuclear engine, so it can stay up in the air indefinitely, okay, until the materials wear out from friction of flying through the air for so long. But it travels only at, like normal jet speed, so 500 miles an hour, so it can stay airborne a long, long time. And earlier yesterday, we had multiple E-3 Sentry AWACS planes over Alaska, and the U.S. is planning to do a test launch of the Minuteman III ICBM out of Vandenberg. They were supposed to do it last night. I think they're going to now do it tonight instead, maybe due to weather or some other reason. I don't know, but they're going to be testing a Minuteman III ICBM. And what's going to be interesting to pay attention to with this is how many test vehicles or test warheads are attached to this missile. They always have some test warheads that are unarmed to simulate a real warhead. Okay, if they just have one, that means that we're not really changing our nuclear posture at all, because that's what our current deployment is one warhead per Minuteman. But if they test it with 3 warheads, test warheads, that means that we are up-arming our Minuteman missiles after the expiration of the START treaty that was never renewed by Biden or Trump. Okay, so that's going to be something to pay attention to. Also, yesterday, we had some very long nuclear codes transmitted by the U.S. military. We had a 268-character emergency action message and a 164-character emergency action message. So those are targeting codes for U.S. nuclear forces. The standard length of these codes is 30 characters. So 268 and 164 characters is very, very long. And typically when there's going to be some kind of escalation, they transmit these very long codes. And Germany is debating to start teaching kids in school crisis preparedness and civil defense. The proposed curriculum includes evacuation and first aid drills, home emergency planning, and simulations for floods, cyber attacks, or power outages. Students would learn to maintain 72-hour survival kits with essentials such as food, water, and flashlights. Officials stress that no military training will be involved, distinguishing the plan from Poland's youth shooting program. So Poland recently created this military training program for high schoolers that they can basically get trained with the military even before joining the military. It's sort of like ROTC, but kind of different because you don't have to sign a contract, and that's part of the way that Poland is preparing their youth for the coming war with Russia, which I think is inevitable. And Ukraine hit some oil refineries and a petrochemical plant yesterday. They also hit a 110 kilovolt substation in the Kursk Oblast. Specifically, they hit the Kostovo oil refinery in Nizhny Novgorod, which is really deep into Russia. That's like east of Moscow. And they also hit a petrochemical plant in Bashkortostan, which is well over 700 miles away from Ukraine. And what's interesting is that there was a U.S. high-priority reconnaissance plane up in the air earlier yesterday, right before these strikes. So clearly, the U.S. is helping Ukraine with these strikes on Russia. They're sending high-priority recon planes into the Black Sea the last week, every 2 or 3 days. And these high-priority recon planes send intelligence directly to the U.S. president and the top generals. So the U.S. President Trump is well aware of everything going on. And we did hear some official sources confirm a few weeks ago that the U.S. was responsible for planning 90% of these strikes on the Russian oil and energy infrastructure. Okay, so the Ukrainians are literally just pulling the trigger, but the U.S. is picking out the targets. Okay. And the UK, that's Great Britain, transferred additional Storm Shadow cruise missiles to Ukraine, boosting Ukraine's long-range strike capability against targets deep inside of Russia, Bloomberg reported yesterday, citing unnamed sources. And 3 German-Russian dual citizens were convicted on October 30th in Munich on charges stemming from a plot to spy for Russia on U.S. military bases in Bavaria and attack American service members in response to U.S. support for Ukraine. Wow. And senior Nigerian military officials say they are ready to defend Nigeria against any U.S. invasion. And this comes after Trump posted to his social media account that the U.S. would use military action against Nigeria if the attacks against Christians in Nigeria don't stop. And the Trump administration is considering deploying troops into Mexico now. And the U.S., Mexico, and Canada completed an air defense exercise with fighter jets on October 28th through the 29th. Canadian F-18 interceptors, part of NORAD's response force for Russian cruise missiles, were part of the exercise, okay? So if you're not aware, Canada has a critical role in the defense of North America in a nuclear war. Primarily, they're F-18s based out of Cold Lake in Alberta, and also in Bagotville. Those two bases host the F-18s that Canada would use to shoot down Russian cruise missiles that are launched towards the United States. Okay. Also, Canada has the CP-140 Auroras based out of Comox and out of Nova Scotia. CFB Comox is near Vancouver, and then they have another base in Nova Scotia near Maine, Greenville, CFB Greenville. Those two bases have the Canadian sub-hunter planes that would be responsible for monitoring where Russian subs are off the east and west coast of North America. And Poland plans to start building a national anti-drone system within the next few months, without waiting for the European Union's drone wall initiative, the country's deputy defense minister said. And Trump posted on Truth Social that you must vote for Cuomo in New York City, whether you like him or not, to prevent Mamdani from winning. So I'm going to be covering the elections tonight live. Huge election in New York City. Mamdani, who's considered to be a radical anti-Semite, is leading in the polls against Cuomo and Sliva. Sliva is the Republican, and he's got like 24% of the vote so far in the polls, and Cuomo's at 34% and Mamdani's at 40%. So Trump is basically telling Republicans to not vote for Sliva, but vote for Cuomo instead, okay? We also have a nuke sniffer airborne this afternoon over the Central Plains. You can see it flying over Iowa and Minnesota. We also have two B-52 nuclear bombers airborne over Louisiana and the panhandle of Texas. And last night we had another U.S. sub-hunter off the coast of Baja, California, keeping an eye probably on the cartels in this area. And then yesterday we had 4 nuclear war command and control planes airborne, and then we had those AWACS planes in Alaska. Okay, so I think they were going to launch the ICBM last night, and then they changed it to tonight. And twice over the weekend, 3 large drones were spotted over the Klein Brogel Air Base in Belgium, which houses U.S. B-61 nuclear gravity bombs. According to the Belgian Defense Ministry, the drones flew in a way which clearly suggested they were targeting Klein Brogel. A drone jammer was deployed but failed to disrupt the drones. So that means the drones were probably operating on a different frequency, so the jammer didn't work. While police and a helicopter tracked the drones but lost them several kilometers from Klein Brogel. So that is very, very concerning. And Trump made some comments on Ukraine on Air Force One. He was asked if he was going to give Ukraine Tomahawk missiles. He said, "At this moment, I'm not." But he also said that he could change his opinion. He said, "No, not really. I can change, but at this moment, I'm not." And then he said, at this point, we must let Ukraine and Russia settle the war for themselves. Okay, so he's kind of backing out of any kind of peace talk anymore with Russia. And the director of counterterrorism of the Trump administration, Sebastian Gorka, says that Nicolas Maduro has ties to actors who have conspired to assassinate Trump. So Maduro, the leader of Venezuela, has apparently worked with characters that tried to assassinate Trump, or actors as they call them. And Russia has significantly increased the production of their BTR armored personnel carriers, signaling a large-scale shift towards Soviet-style mass manufacturing of military vehicles. Russian defense plants are now capable of producing between 500 and 700 BTR units monthly. Wow. So going back to the Soviet times, okay, more evidence that Russia is preparing for a war against NATO. And an explosive device was detonated Saturday morning on the 4th floor of the Goldenson building at Harvard's Longwood Medical Campus in Boston, Massachusetts, according to a statement released yesterday by the Harvard University Police Department to the Harvard Crimson. 2 days ago. Okay, so very strange. And there was also this big stabbing incident in the UK on a train. 10 people were hospitalized with life-threatening injuries. And that's the reason why you need to live in a place where you're able to legally carry self-defense tools, okay? Because if just one person on that train had a self-defense tool, they could have neutralized this scumbag, this piece of trash that's going straight to hell. Okay, if just one person had a handheld self-defense tool, all right, but because in the UK the gun laws are so strict, the knife laws are so strict, you basically have no right to defend yourself. And it's turning the same way here. Like New York City, you can't carry a firearm unless you're a police officer off duty, and you need to have all these crazy permits if you do want to have a firearm in New York City, and that still doesn't let you to actually carry it, okay? And you can't even carry a pocket knife or pepper spray in New York City. Meanwhile, the scumbags that are doing these things are carrying whatever they want, okay? And Ukrainian special forces have landed near Pokrovsk to try to regain control of key logistical routes around Pokrovsk. So Pokrovsk is a critical city in eastern Ukraine that the Russians have now surrounded, and they're closing in on it. And the Ukrainians have now sent in their best special forces to prevent that from happening. And we're hearing that 2,000 plus Russian freight trucks are now stuck in Belarus waiting to enter Kaliningrad after Lithuania closed the border with Belarus. Okay, so these trucks cross over Lithuania every single day to get to Kaliningrad, which is a part of Russia that is geographically isolated from the rest of the Russian mainland. So they take their trucks and they go through Lithuania, and Lithuania has shut the border with Belarus. So there's no way that these trucks can now go to Kaliningrad. And I think that's going to push Putin over the edge, because that would basically economically kill Kaliningrad, because in order to ship basic goods into Kaliningrad, Russia's now going to have to use ships, through the Baltic Sea, which gets a lot more expensive, okay? And Russia fired 270 missiles at Ukraine in October, a 46% increase from September, and the highest number since 2023. And U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said that his meeting with the Chinese defense minister was positive, and that we agreed to create channels to de-escalate problems. And a new Wall Street Journal poll revealed that Zelensky's approval rating among Republicans is rising again. The publication notes that 64% of Republican voters now consider Putin to be the main obstacle to peace, while only 13% view Zelensky as the obstacle to peace. Interesting. And the U.S. Federal Reserve over the weekend injected $30 billion into the U.S. banking system through overnight repos. This amount far surpassed even the peak of the dot-com bubble. So guys, it looks like a perfect storm is brewing. Okay, we have civil unrest here in the U.S., civil war, okay, with these elections today and the SNAP benefits and food benefits being cut off, and just the divisiveness in this country now. And then we also have war overseas in multiple areas, especially Europe and the Middle East, soon Asia. And then we also have the economic situation. We have precious metals reaching record highs. Okay, so guys, get prepared. Okay, make sure you have all the things you need to survive an economic collapse, World War III, nuclear war, civil unrest. Okay, I've been prepping for a long time, so I don't really need to do these things anymore. But if you're not a prepper, I highly recommend you start preparing yourself for all these things, because they're going to happen. Whether you like it or not, it's going to happen. It's written in the Bible, and we're long overdue for a major world war. We're long overdue for an economic collapse, okay? And last night we had two super heavy U.S. military cargo planes, the heaviest in the U.S. military, fly over the Atlantic to Europe. So I wonder if they're delivering Tomahawk missiles or potentially air defenses to Ukraine. This is very strange, guys. And then we had a massive amount of reconnaissance yesterday. We had that high priority reconnaissance plane in the Black Sea. We had Forte 10 and RQ-4 Global Hawk reconnaissance drone patrolling Poland and the Russian border in Poland. And then we also had another U.S. sub-hunter in the Baltic Sea. So something's definitely brewing in Eastern Europe. And this RQ-4 is very interesting. It went up to Poland from Italy and did this quick, like 2-3 hour reconnaissance mission near Kaliningrad in Belarus, and then went back. So that's pretty weird. It means that there must have been something here that triggered this drone to be deployed. And then here we have some satellite imagery showing some tents going up in Puerto Rico for U.S. troops for the coming military invasion operation, airstrikes on Venezuela. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I will be live later on tonight to cover the election results and give you guys an update on all the breaking news. So until later on, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere. And before I continue with the breaking news, I wanted to mention the sponsor for this update, which is NYPrepper Supply. Guys, NYPrepper Supply is doing a massive sale on their 3-month emergency food supply. And to get the deal, you got to use my link. It's in the description below this video. It's preparewithNYPrepper.com. So they're selling their 3-month emergency food kit at 30% off. Plus, they're going to throw in an additional month of food. So that's 4 months of food. And the normal price would be $944. And they're selling it at just under $700 for 4 months of food. And this food has a 25-year shelf life. And it's all packed into rugged, watertight buckets that don't take up a lot of space in your home. And the food is obviously nutritious, which is very important for surviving any kind of SHTF situation. You can also use this food for camping and traveling. But use the link preparewithNYPrepper.com to get a free month of emergency food with your 3-month emergency food kit from NYPrepper Supply, all at 30% off, just $700 for 4 months of food. So use the link preparewithNYPrepper.com to get the deal, and the link is in the description below this video.